For your topic today, is it different, or is it another failure of Christianity?
Well, I'm on this kick, and I'm up to the 48th episode of Failures, and this is a failure show. And today's topic is called the soul silliness. And the idea here is that every question you could ask about a soul leads to confusion and nonsense answers. What is a soul? Do animals have souls? When and how does it enter the body? When and how does it leave? What do souls do? Pretty much any claim I make today has believers that believe those claims, and then there's a whole bunch of other people that believe the opposite. And the reason is that there's no objective reality in which to test these claims and arrive at a conclusion where everybody can agree on the answer. So you get this whole Wild West idea of different beliefs.
That would seem to be a problem.
Yes, that's a problem.
If, everybody has a different idea of the soul, why hasn't God cleared this up?
That's right. And the atheist answer is there appears to be no higher authority to which you can appeal. So James D. has done a really great lecture on the soul, and I don't want to go over that stuff again. You've done some work on the soul, and there's just a lot to say and a lot of confusion. The word soul in the Bible is a translation of the Hebrew word nephesh and the Greek word psyche. And Hebrew word literally means a creature that breathes, and a Greek word means a living being. So there's a lot of early association with breath, your aspiration, when you die, you expire, which is also a breath thing. You stop breathing. And
they didn't count children. You weren't counted until you took your first breath, and then a month after that. By the way, I don't know if it's on YouTube, but Aaron Ra has also done a thing where he looks at the idea of breath and wind and how this forms a trend going through religions and gods. It's a fascinating look, even if it's not
cool.
correct. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a very ancient idea, and the biblical references to the soul are related to the concept of breath mostly, and establish no distinction between the ethereal soul and the corporal body. There doesn't seem to be a big difference between the two. And the idea of the soul being immortal is really an older Greek idea, and some think it should be biblically rejected. Colossians 2:8 says, "Look that no one takes you captive by means of a philosophy and empty deception according to human tradition." So this is from the Jehovah's Witnesses, would reject the idea of a soul separate from the body. Spirit seems to have grown out of the ancient idea of joining the ancestors, where you want to go, commune with the ancestors. And most primitive religions have an idea of spirit or ghosts, and they can look out for you and they can guide you, or they can play pranks on you, hide your keys or whatever. A nice thing about a soul is maybe you get to escape death, and that's a very appealing thing, and maybe you get to see your loved ones again. And these ideas are, I think, comforting, and they play into the wishful thinking that, hey, I get to have all these, you have my cake and eat it too, but there's really no evidence for it. So do animals have soul? Well, if we're talking about breath, then yes, they do have a soul, but it makes no sense to try to manipulate animals with the promise of reward or the threat of torment. Only humans are gullible enough to be conned, and presumably babies have souls, so what becomes of them when they die? Either they, have eternal torture, or they get a free pass to heaven, and either way, it leads you down the path to unsettling nonsense. Mm-hmm. And so there's this rationalization in Christianity that only humans have souls that are immortal, and we'll just brush that children thing under the rug and not talk about it. When and how does the soul enter the body? Well, if the soul is breath, then of course after your birth, and it's caused by the slap of the doctor or the midwife's hand on the baby's bottom to get it to start breathing. But that doesn't leave much room for religion. If the soul enters the body at conception, then that raises all sorts of concerns about what happens about the souls of identical twins, because twinning happens after conception, or chimera babies that are multiple embryos joined together in a single person, or even clones. All of these things raise some very thorny questions for the soul concept. And I personally think the whole cloning idea has been, put on the back shelf because it really does raise a lot of soul questions, and it brings a lot of attention, negative attention, I think, to the idea of a soul.
I think the cloning goes beyond that as well. I agree with you that the soul is a part of it. But it does get to issues of identity, lots of ethical issues, what makes, the measure of a man or the measure of a human being.
Right, is it really human?
Even if there's no soul, we've got a lot of stuff to sort out there.
Right, absolutely. And a very telling thing, and I talked about this in an earlier episode, is in vitro fertilization. Christianity got very crazy about that because we were having conception outside the human body. And eventually they settled down and thought it was okay because IVF was making a lot of Christian babies, and so a lot of couples that pay for that sort of service are Christian, and so anyway. But that's
and then we allowed for same-sex marriage and same-sex adoption, and all of a sudden IVF becomes a viable path for lesbians to take your babies away from you, or create their own babies.
Create their own babies. Oh no. Well, if the soul enters the body after conception, then an omniscient God would presumably know when to crawl up your mother's uterus and put the soul in, and do it after there was any threat of abortion. So abortion's okay, right? Or after child death or something, or after any thought of child death. So anyway, no matter how you slice it, this gets a little messy. What does the soul do? Well, if somebody's going to judge and torture a soul, presumably it's the hub of moral thought and responsibility. But there's this problem about memory, that maybe you've forgotten a lot of your memories. Maybe you have Alzheimer's or something, and you've lost your mind, or maybe you've had a brain injury. And if you don't have your memories, what sense does it make to punish you for stuff you've done that you can't even remember? Or if you're not mentally very capable, does it make sense to punish you for things that you don't understand? There's the question of, do souls have free will? And that's another rabbit hole to go down. Where do they live? Well, maybe they haunt old houses. I'm not sure. There's all sorts of variations on the soul. We can have immortality of the past, so maybe souls get to have finite rides in human bodies, but they live forever both in the past and in the future. In which case, does the judgment really make sense there? There's this idea of reincarnation, which is not a Christian idea, but why not? It's just another variation. Are there a finite number of souls? Well, how many are there, and how many have there been, and these sorts of things. You can have souls knocking around outside your body, and maybe that's astral projection. That's kind of a New Agey idea. You can have your souls knocking around after death. You can have ghosts and possessions, and you can find your soulmate by finding your true love and these sorts of things. So even sex in heaven, you can have souls having sex. So that's all sorts of crazy stuff that various people have proposed, and some people believe very strongly. And what are you going to do for immortality, with your immortality? Are you going to play harps? Are you going to praise God for the entire time? Or are you going to haunt creepy old houses? What about those 72 virgins that are promised to martyrs of Allah? Did they get to regenerate, or what? Anyway, so I just tried to scratch the surface here that pretty much any question you ask is going to lead you down a rabbit hole and raise a lot of questions, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of consistency. Functionally, the soul is a mechanism for manipulation, in my opinion. It's a reward, a pretend reward, or a claim of a reward for following the rules. And it's a means to punish those who seemingly don't follow the rules. And it gives a false sense of justice for the evil in the world, that you can presumably make believe that these people are going to go get their just reward in the afterlife. But in reality, that's not what happens. What happens is they have to be punished or dealt with in this life. And so there's no consistency or sense to the idea of the soul. It needs to be exactly that thing that will sell whatever religion. And that's a failure of Christianity and other religions.
And maybe today, if we get some theist callers, perhaps we'll find some people who
get some clarification
believe in the soul, and they can tell us what they believe about a soul and why.
Yeah, sounds great.